I just want to say that every time first of all, I really want to thank the people who come in live because I can just do this pre-recorded and send it out as a recording. But the fact that these teachers come in live and do this is a tremendous thing. It creates also a sense of intimacy because we also get to ask questions. And I'm so grateful. I know Gila got up. I know Gila's in Denver. I don't know if it's 2 hours back or 3 hours back. So I'm not sure if it's 6:30 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. I'm not sure what it is, but I have to tell you how much Akara Satov I have. And I also want to say that every single time I read one of these bios of these women, I'm just so taken aback by how accomplished the Jewish woman is today. And I think I say that all the time, but it never it never gets tiresome for me because it's always like this wow moment that I always have. And I get to speak to all these women, like just in the last few days, I got to speak to all these different types of women from ages of 20, and everybody doing such incredible work in so many different areas and just really building themselves. And I feel really, really privileged to be able to meet these women and to have that in my life. So I just want to say thank you so much. So Mrs. Gila Ross is the director. I want to make sure I got the updated. Mrs. Gila Ross is the director of Women and Families for the Jewish Experience in Denver, Colorado. She has impacted lives in Germany, Canada, the UK, the US, and is an acclaimed educator and coach to help transform relationships and lives. You will love her vibrant, positive, and relatable style. She has a passion for sharing the joy and relevance of Judaism and for positive parenting. Her Power Up podcast was named Top Jewish Podcast Worldwide and just launched the Confident Parent podcast. Gila is the author of Living Beautifully, which navigates the complex terrains of life, providing the tools and principles to appreciate what is truly valuable, see obstacles as challenges, and guide readers towards a balanced life full of meaning, joy, and fulfillment. Drawing from the time-tested wisdom of Pirkei Avos, Gila Ross shows readers how to live beautifully despite the pressures and complexity of living a modern life. You can download her free guide to Shabbos Prep in an Hour, filled with tips and recipes, and I posted that. Gila, just let me know, how many hours back are you now?
So I'm 2 hours back. So it's 7:30 in the morning. And I think the thing that's worked out really well is that we're actually going away, my family, and so it worked out perfect timing because we're leaving like at 8:30, like in about 45 minutes to the airport. So it worked out perfectly. So thank you so much for
Okay.
the opportunity.
Thank you, Gila. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to this wonderful, wonderful group of women. I've done this before, and every time I do this, it's inspiring that women that take time out of their morning to come together, to daven together, to learn together. It's really, really a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for having me. So, I don't know if this has ever happened to anyone else, but sometimes it certainly happens to me, right? Where I think to myself, I want to grow. I want to become better spiritually, but life keeps getting in the way, right? I would be such a great parent if not for my kids' challenges, right? I would be such a great, wife if not for my husband. I would be such a great friend if not for my friends, right? Like there's all these things, and I would be so, great at davening in the morning and everything if I wasn't so busy with life, right? So the question that I kind of wanted to look at today is what what circumstances do we need in order to grow spiritually, right? To become close to Hashem, to fulfill our tafkid in this world. Like what circumstances do we need to have in our lives in order to do that? And in order to kind of look at this question, I thought we'll look at a very interesting story in the Torah. And when I tell you the story, I want you to pretend it's your first time ever hearing the story, because I find that a lot of times as an adult, we learn the Torah stories, we learn the stories, and we may have heard them before. It depends on what your background is. If you went to a Jewish school and you're educated, you may have heard them from when you were a young child. If you came to Yiddishkeit later in your life, you may have heard them many times before. And sometimes when we hear things, a lot of times we kind of like become immune to the story. But when we listen to a story from the Torah for the first time, as if we're hearing it for the first time, sometimes we look at it and we're like, hold on a second, what's going on here? And I think really that is what the Torah is supposed to do for us, right? We're supposed to look at the Torah and kind of be like, what's going on here? Because that's how we come to a deeper understanding of what's going on, and we kind of learn the deeper messages that Hashem is giving us in there. So there's I'm going to read it out from you, right? So the story is that Moshe is a shepherd. He's looking after his sheep. One of them runs away, and uh, um and and he goes out to find it, right? And what happens is he sees, Moshe said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. He passes by a bush that's on fire, but it's not being consumed. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, Hashem called to him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not come near. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. Right? And as you're reading the story, as you're hearing the story, I think there's so much that we can kind of delve into. But I want to look into one specific question, right? Why does Hashem tell Moshe, take off your shoes because the ground that you're standing on is holy, right? Hashem could have appeared to him when the sheep was there, right? When he was in middle of the sheep and said to him, come to me, right? Hashem could have done many, many things. Why did Hashem specifically appear to him in this burning bush and say that the ground that you're standing on is holy? Keep that question in mind, okay? And I'm going to ask us another question. So I want to go back to the original question. The original question is, what do we need in life in order to grow? In order to understand that, I think we need to define, what does growth mean? What does it mean to grow? So I think it's we can look at the Aseret HaDibros, and it becomes clear to us from the Aseret HaDibros what Hashem wants from us, right? The first two of the Aseret HaDibros, what is it? The first one says, Anochi Hashem, right? That we are called upon to believe in Hashem, to build that relationship with Hashem. And what that means is not just that there is a God, but it means that there is a God who created the world, who took us out of Egypt, which means that he's involved in our life, right? All of these pieces together kind of show us that we are called upon to believe in a Hashem who's running the world, and that world has a purpose. We have a purpose, right? So the first part of the Aseret HaDibros is asking us to believe and build a relationship with Hashem, and understand that there's a purpose to our lives. Now the second one is lo yeh, right? Do not have other gods. Now nowadays, it's not a taiva for us. It's not the Yetzer Hara that we have to have other gods. Does it mean that this mitzvah is no longer valid? No, it doesn't mean the mitzvah is no longer valid. It still is equally valid. It just shows up differently for us. How does it show up for us? And I think the way it shows up for us most of the time is we get so busy with life that we forget that there's a higher purpose, right? And lo yeh lecha is calling upon us and saying, do not replace that purpose, right? The purpose that we defined in the first Aseret HaDibros, build a relationship with Hashem. Do fulfill the purpose that Hashem has created for you. Don't get distracted, right? Don't get so busy in living a practical, comfortable life that you forget what you're really here for. Right. So the first of the Aseret HaDibros is kind of really telling us, focus on what your purpose is, right? Hashem created you. Hashem is involved in your life. Hashem has a purpose for you. And don't get distracted by other things in life that you forget what your purpose is. Hold on a second. Hashem created the world, right? Hashem created the world as it is, which means he created the world where we have to be practical, right? For example, God forbid someone's sick, you have to, it's not that you're allowed to go to the doctor. We have to, right? We have to do what we can to protect ourselves, to heal ourselves. Someone needs a parnasa, you have to go out in the world and do it, right? Now, obviously, it gets into the whole question of hishtadlus versus bitachon, but the underlying thing is we still have to do hishtadlus. If Hashem wanted us to focus on our purpose, why on earth did he create the world where we have to be practical? Because that practicality distracts us from focusing on it, right? Because imagine if we didn't have to go to the doctor, right? Someone woke up with a sore throat in the morning, and there was no such thing as going to a doctor. All they had to do was daven to Hashem, and Hashem would heal them, right? It would be so much easier to focus on Hashem and to focus on spirituality and to focus on our purpose and to focus on building our relationship with Hashem, right? So why did Hashem make it specifically that we have to be involved in the world, right? We have to go to work. We have to, make dinner. We have to prepare food. We have to go to the doctor. All these different things, which sets us up in a situation where perhaps it's easier to forget that there is a Hashem and that there is a higher purpose to our life. I don't know if anyone wants to try and guess or answer, venture a guess to why Hashem would do that. But if anyone would like to, you're welcome to say something or
do not be embarrassed of what Hashem gives us. So we make an effort.
Beautiful.
And I would say that anything that we're doing in the practical is a way of bringing the upstairs to the downstairs. Like, it's true you have to do the millionth load of laundry or the millionth lunch. But if you have in mind that that's our service to Hashem in doing those things, it elevates those practical things. Because Hashem didn't make it that we should be on a mountain away from everybody and just be holy on the mountain and not be tested.
Exactly. And I think I want to elaborate. Thank you so much. I want to elaborate a little bit on what you were saying, right? Is if we talk about like the purpose that Hashem has given us in this world, right? What is that purpose that Hashem has given us? Hashem has given us the purpose that we have to become the very best version of ourselves. How do we do that? The Torah and the mitzvahs teaches us how to do that. Now, if I were to tell you, I have this fantastic perspective, shidduch, and the boy is wonderful. He's great. He's got great midas. He's everything. Just one thing, he's not responsible. What would most people say? No, thank you. Right? Because responsibility is a huge part of our character, right? And what Hashem wants us to do is Hashem wants us to take responsibility, right? It's not just about, getting up in the morning and davening to Hashem for the mon, right? There was a specific phase in our history, but it's also about going out there and preparing the food and going to work, right? Because all of that develops within us our character, our personality, our midas. It develops our responsibility, right? For example, it's super easy to keep the laws of Lashon Hara when you're living by yourself. When does the test come in? When you are with other people, right? That's when we kind of take the Torah learning and we put it into practice. And the Chofetz Chaim says that this is the message that Hashem was telling Moshe. Right? Hashem was telling Moshe, he was saying to him that the ground you are standing on is holy. What is he saying to him? Is he saying so often in life we feel like when my kids grow up, that's when I'll have time to learn, right? Or when when I retire, that's when I'll have time to learn. Or in 2 weeks when life calms down, that's when I'll have time to daven, or that's when I'll have time to do a thing, right? And what Hashem is telling Moshe is, no, what's the holiest moment of your life? It's right now. This moment that you're standing in is holy, right? This moment that you have is holy. As messy and as you know as complicated as this moment is, this is how you're going to go get closer to Hashem. How? Let me give you examples, right? Let's say you're going somewhere and you're waiting for a bus, right? The bus is late. You could think to yourself, I'm going to be late. I'm going to miss out this. I'm not going to have time to do that. What that is that is a holy moment, right? Because Hashem is giving you an opportunity where you kind of can say to yourself, hold on a second, is the bus late? Or will I get there when I'm supposed to? Is the bus late going to make me lose my patience? Or am I going to be patient? And each one of us is going to have a little bit of a different tikkun to do in that moment, right? For some people, it's going to be they have to work on the patience. For some, it's going to be they have to work on the bitachon. For some, it's going to mean they have to learn how to pre-plan better. But the message that Hashem is giving to Moshe is that holiness and growth is not necessarily found in those opportune moments. It's not just on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur when you're in shul and everything's quiet and everything's great and that's how we can connect to Hashem. It's in every single messy moment of life, right? Those messy moments. How do we respond to it, right? Because it's not just about what happens to us in life, but it's about what Hashem how we respond to what Hashem has given us. And I think in the times of the Avos and in pagan times, life was the battle for health and livelihood, right? That's what people were concerned with, right? Can we get food? Can we survive another winter? Nowadays, we live in a different generation, right? And for us, it's not just about the health and the livelihood. We live in a time where we're striving for comfort, for wealth, right? And this is what I think Laia is kind of telling us, is that in that drive for comfort and wealth and a good life, don't forget what your primary purpose is. Don't forget that you're here to become closer to Hashem, to become a better person through keeping the Torah and the mitzvahs. How does this play out? I'll give you an example, right? Let's just say you have two people that start a business, for example, right? The first person is totally focused on what their primary purpose is. How are they going to approach their business? They're going to do the hishtadlus, they're going to daven to Hashem. When it comes up a question of should I be honest here or should I not be honest here? There's a temptation to not be honest. They're going to focus on what their primary purpose is, which is to become a better person, to become closer to Hashem through keeping the Torah and mitzvahs. And they are going to say no to being dishonest, to not treating their workers well, whatever it is, whatever their challenges is. Someone, on the other hand, who forgets what their primary purpose is, right? They could be a religious Jew. They could keep Shabbos and Torah and kashrus and work on the midas, etc. But when we forget what our primary purpose is, it's much harder to stay focused, right? So yeah, I might even daven for the success of it, but when I forget that I'm here to become closer to Hashem, to work on my midas, to become a better person, then when I'm tempted with a situation to cheat, for example, instead of saying, hold on a second, my purpose is to become a better person, to become closer to Hashem, how can I? Right? If Hashem wants me to have the money, I'll have the money. Instead, the person might be like, oh, but I need to do this. I need to do the other. Right? And I think what the Aseret HaDibros are demanding from us, and what the message Hashem is giving to us, is that the holiness, right? The opportunity for growth, for becoming closer to Hashem is found in every single moment, right? It's not just about those moments where we take time off and we come onto a Zoom call and we learn a class of Torah. That is beautiful, and we have to do that. It's also about the times when we're on the Zoom class and someone disturbs us, right? How do we respond to that, right? Or we get off the class and we meet someone and we're tempted to talk Lashon Hara. Like, how do we interact with those moments? That is where growth is really happening, right? Because the Yetzer Hara of us will tell us, I'll tell you how to get to your goals, right? Your goal is to, I don't know, have a clean house. I'll tell you that the way to do it is that get annoyed with anyone who leaves their stuff lying around. But what the Yetzer Tov is, and what our purpose is to remind us what our journey is, and what our lifelong work is, to remind us, yes, it's nice to have a clean house, but that's not my purpose. My purpose is to become a person with better midas, to become closer to Hashem. And therefore, when my kids or my husband or my whatever spouse or someone leaves their shoes lying around, that is a holy moment, right? Because how am I going to respond to that? Am I going to respond with kindness and gentleness and say, sorry, do you mind to please put your shoes away? It's really important for me that you put your shoes away. Or am I going to say, you know what? This is, I've told you 100 times to put your shoes away. This is dangerous. Get annoyed, maybe shout, whatever it is, right? Those moments are the holiness, right? Those are the moments where we can grow. And I think I honestly I believe that it's not a once and done thing, right? It's not like something that you learn this idea in a class and then that's it, your life is transformed. It's a constant avoider that we have in our life. It's the work that we have in our life is to remember that our primary purpose in this world is to become a better person, to become closer to Hashem through the Torah and mitzvahs, and through all those moments that Hashem gives us in our lives. And obviously, like it's a big calling, and I think we have to also remember when we do this is that Hashem designed us in a way where we're going to mess up, where we're going to make mistakes. So even in those moments where Hashem, the shoes are lying around and I forget and I get annoyed with the person who left them lying around. Even that moment where I messed up is a holy ground. It's a holy moment. Why? Because how am I going to learn from that moment? Am I going to take ownership and say, you know what? Yes, you shouldn't have left your shoes lying around. And the way I responded wasn't right. I'm sorry for the way I responded. I'm going to try harder next time. Or are we going to say, you know what? If you wouldn't have left the shoes lying around, I wouldn't have done that, right? So we could see that when we can sort of this powerful, this tiny little sentence in the Torah, it's such a powerful mindset for us, is that Hashem is telling Moshe, and he's telling all of us through it, is that the ground you're standing on is holy. The moment you're standing on is the moment you're in right now has the opportunity for growth, for holiness. It's not that we have to wait until, life calms down in 2 weeks. And how long have we been saying that? For 20 years, right? And it's not just that we have to wait until other people or other things happen. It's this particular moment can be a moment of spirituality, of connection, of becoming a better person, no matter how messy and physical that actual moment is. So I'd like to open it up to questions if anyone has a question.
So just 1 second, Gila. I'm just going to ask people to raise their hands. I just want to say this was so beautiful, so unbelievable. I just loved it. And it's so true. And what you said was, what was so amazing, it's not just the moment that you have to choose between those two things, but it's also the moment when you messed up to take responsibility for that mess up and to create a moment of holiness in that place as well. I love that. Okay, I think that somebody had asked before, I don't know where she is right now, before I let those other people, there was somebody else who came on. One second, just one second. I just want to go into Ilana. I would like to ask a question. Go ahead, Ilana.
Yes, so thank you so much. It was a very beautiful share. The only thing I would like to ask, there are a lot of times it's very beautiful to look at the holy moment and to refine yourself. But I believe that, and what I learned, that empathy, compassion, and good midos without very strong boundaries, it's very dangerous, because a lot of the times, if you take that holy moment and you always refine yourself, but you see that it's all used against you, you have to be very aware when to draw those, when to put strong boundaries. So could you comment on that, please?
It's a beautiful, you're raising a very, very important point. And Rav Dessler actually has a beautiful piece of this where he talks about how each of the Avos show us something different, right? Like, so, and I'll summarize it very quickly, but I would encourage you to kind of read it because it's beautiful. Is that Avraham is Chesed, and Yitzhak was Gevurah. What was Yaakov? Yaakov was Emes, Torah, truth, right? What's better, to have Chesed, the kindness, the empathy, the outgoing midah, or is it better to have the Gevurah, the boundaries, the no? Neither is better, right? The beauty, the harmony comes when we learn to use the right one at the right time. To use chesed when gevura is necessary can be harmful. To use gevura, boundaries, when chesed is what the answer is, that is also harmful. So you're raising a very, very good point. The point is what does Hashem want me to do with this moment? Right. And that's why, we're told in that we live in a community. We're supposed to have a Rav or a Rebbetzin. We're supposed to have like-minded friends that we can bounce ideas off, because sometimes we get stuck in our own blind spot. But you're 100% right that there's no one answer. This is what you're supposed to do in this moment. The holiness and the growth comes from asking the question, from seeking the question of, what does Hashem want me to do with this moment? And for some people, it will be to put down a boundary. For some people, it will be to go beyond themselves and give. It depends, and right, it's so personal to our own personality and our character traits, and what Hashem wants us to develop. So thank you so much for raising that point, because I think you're 100% right, and it comes down to that question of, how does Hashem want me to respond in this moment?
So Gila, I just want to expand on that for a second. I think Lynn and then Edna, and then we're going to close it off. But I just want to ask you something about what you just said. Like, how does that pertain to the moment of us taking responsibility of how we're going to use the moment in a moment of Kedusha? Like, where do the boundaries even come in? Because let's say, for example, like you gave the example in business, right? You gave the example of business where two people go into business, one just wants to make all this money and has God in front of him, understands that he has a purpose in this world, and therefore chooses to do everything, asking himself, what would Hashem want me to do? Because it's not about my desires, my lust. I have a purpose in this world, so I'm going to do everything the kavod Hashem. Where does the boundaries come? Like, where does the boundaries come into the examples that you gave? Because if your children leave the shoes out, right, and you can only be accountable for the way that you respond. You can't be accountable for what somebody else does. You have to, meaning that, let's say, for example, like for one of the examples that you gave, and then I want you to bring in where the boundaries come in, is, for example, like, let's say, for example, you really, something happens between you and somebody else, and you can't be accountable. There's really no real question about boundaries, because it's really about looking inwards. What is the moral compass that I want to have as a person? It doesn't matter what that other person does. What's my moral compass? Because I can only be responsible for myself. I can't be responsible for the other person, just for myself. What's that word I'm looking for? Like, what is how am I going to make sure that I have the proper, so where do boundaries come in? Because you're just really sitting with your center self of having Dvekas with Hashem and really making the moment Kedusha.
Yeah. So I think it's a great question, and again, I'm going to try and give an answer in a short thing. In a word, boundaries are not about what the other person's doing. It's about how I respond to what the other person's doing. Let me use the example of the moving the shoes out, right? Now, let's say you have someone whose primary response when they see the shoes left out is to kind of pick them up, resentfully put them away, and just kind of brew that resentment inside, right? Now, then you contrast that with a person whose response is in their natural response is that they see the shoes and they yell at the person and say that you should put them away, right? Or whatever it is. Now, both of those people are going to have a different avoda in that moment, right? The person whose natural response, and again, this is so personal, so I'm just using it as an example, right? I don't, whose natural response is to just put them away and resent it and bury that hurt deep down. Maybe their avoda is actually to speak up and to turn around to that person and say, it really bothers me, right? There's nothing wrong with telling someone else how you feel. It's a good thing, right? Maybe that's their avoda, that Hashem wants them to speak up about it. Hashem wants them to develop that part of their personality where they can resolve conflicts in a nice way. Whereas for the other person whose thing is to initially get angry or constantly say it, maybe their avoda is to develop a bit of empathy and to say, you know what? Like, everyone's going to have a different avoda in the moment based on what their personality is and what the situation demands of that person. I think it starts with recognizing that it's not just about the shoes. The shoes is an opportunity for growth, right? And then we ask ourselves, what is the growth that I need to do in this moment, right? And it changes moment to moment. It changes person to person. There's no one right answer. There's no answer that every time you see the shoes out, you should do X, Y, Z. It depends. It depends on you. It depends on your personality. It depends what Midas Hashem wants you to develop in your personality. Does that answer the question?
It does. It does answer the question. It does. Thank you. Thanks, Gila. Okay, I saw there was 2 more questions. I'm going to let those 2 questions. Edna, go ahead.
So I was listening on YouTube and doing everything. I'm behind with commitments, and when she hit on so many points that are pressing right now today. Actually, your question, Naomi, that you asked about the boundaries is the crux of the crisis that I'm in. And it's just like, I'm so amazed by the divine providence of this morning that felt so chaotic. And now it's just like, I'm so happy that I listened and I just had to come on live and let you know. Just amazing divine providence. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Edna.
Thank you. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
beautiful. It was so beautiful. Lynn, do you want to ask your question before
Well, it
we go
wasn't
on?
really a question. It was more like, where were you when I was raising my child and I was making other priorities? But I don't even know if you were born yet. But it's very hard to stop yourself at that point and realize that that's the thing that you're supposed to do. It's just very hard, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. I mean, do you have any tricks that you can trigger in your brain for future reference? You know, like, is there something that will make you say stop and think about what this situation is actually trying to teach you? You know, whether it be patience or
So I happen to think your question is spot on, right? And I kind of alluded to it a little bit when I said this is not a once and done thing, right? This I believe this is our lifelong avoda, right? The Aseret HaDibros are telling us stay focused on your purpose, don't get distracted, right? And this is the avoda that we have in our life. So I think firstly, recognize that this is a lifelong avoda, right? Like I am going to mess up, and that's the way Hashem made the world and Hashem made us, is that we are going to mess up, we are going to forget. And Hashem has given us this beautiful, beautiful gift of teshuvah, of repair, where we can acknowledge what we've done. We can fix things, right? We can repair relationships. We can repair our relationship with Hashem, and growth happens through that, right? And then it's about what is helpful for you in remembering, right? For some people, it's about learning, setting aside time to learn, right? For other people, it's about putting notices on. I would also, yes, someone just put that in the chat. I would also say that is why we have the 6 constant mitzvahs. I would highly, highly encourage people to read the book, The 6 Constant Mitzvahs. I believe it's put out by Artscroll. Incredible book. Read it once a year, right? Read it whenever you need it. Take notes on it. Have these things, like, now that we understand it's a lifelong avoda, the question is, how can I bring it into my life in a way that's meaningful and present for me?
Wow, amazing. Gila, I
Thank
know
you
you
so
have to
much.
go. I want to tell you, this was just so superb, amazing.
Thank you.
So beautiful, Gila. I hope you'll come back soon. Have a safe trip, an amazing trip wherever you're going. How is it, Gila? How is it leaving England and going to Denver now? Like, how has been that, that change for you?
As we say, Baruch Hashem, like every moment is a holy moment, right? I never thought we were going to actually move. My oldest was 18 when we moved, and I was like, no, we're not moving. My kids are too old to move. And Hashem gave us that opportunity, and Baruch Hashem, it's really been a really good move for our family. So Baruch Hashem.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You should have lots of
Thank you.
success. Thank you so much, Gila. This was so beautiful. And thank you for getting up
Thank you.
early.
Yeah, you
My
have to
pleasure.
come back, Gila. Nomi,
Yes,
I
you're
would,
the best
I would
speaker.
love